fan without fear.
He's a completist, not a defeatist.
Colors comics year after year.
Supreme comic book leader.
Fight for the justice that is right.
An advocate, not a terminator.
With the awesome power of his mind.
He speaks for the devil in red.
This is the Fan Without Fear Completist Retrospective. My name is Nick, the Fan Without Fear. Let's take a look at what's on our radar for today. Daredevil number 8, The Stiltman Cometh. This is the first appearance of the Stilt Man, and I will admit, he's a pretty silly character concept. But the Stilt Man will always have a soft spot in my heart, because he spent the entirety of the 60s and 70s trying to pick Daredevil up, take him really, really high, and drop him.
As far as supervillains go, Stilt Man gets a bad rap. He's another classic example of a character who made a strong start in the Silver Age, but was too often reduced to a punchline in the decades that followed. We see the same treatment of classic villains like the Mole Man or Calendar Man. While modern readers may not embrace the concept of a villain who wears a pair of impossibly tall, telescopic metal legs, this is a great issue. Daredevil number 8 by Stan Lee and Wally Wood stands as one of the earliest examples of Daredevil operating like a classic comic book detective. The only aspects of the story I am critical of are not related to the silliness of an armored thief with a lift kit. More than any other comic, this issue of Daredevil really tries to force the idea of Matt Murdock relying on crime-fighting gadgets. This issue even goes so far as to diagram the internal workings of Matt's Billy Club, and there's also a map diagramming Matt's apartment and combination gym/crime lab, which looks like Silver Age drawings of the Batcave or the Fantastic Four's Baxter Building. Fortunately, this is the high watermark before we start to see the gadget concept decline and ultimately disappear from Matt's character. Unfortunately, the ongoing B-plot of the love triangle between Matt, Foggy, and Karen is just now coming to the forefront. Matt and Karen are in love, but unable to confess their feelings to each other because of Matt's blindness. Foggy is nuts about Karen, and she dates him casually because the assumption is he would make a better husband and provider because he is not blind. It's difficult for me to express how much this disturbs and offends me. Regardless of when this book was written, superhero stories work best when they showcase the limitless potential of human beings and promote the value of every individual. On a lighter note, classic comic books are packed with page after page of superheroes literally talking out loud to themselves, explaining everything they are doing in excruciating detail for the benefit of the audience. This antiquated exposition technique is employed quite a lot in this particular issue of Daredevil, with laughable moments like Matt monologuing as he falls through an open manhole. The action is already in progress on our title page. A woman is in the direct path of a runaway car, and Daredevil is locking on to the sounds of her screams to rescue her. With the woman safe, the Scarlet Swashbuckler leaps behind the wheel. Believe it or not, you can find a lot of examples of Matt driving cars in comics, which always seems weird to me. I can accept his ability to navigate by radar, but he can't be a very experienced driver. I just have a hard time imagining a 16-year-old who is blind learning to drive a car or picturing him practicing parallel parking. Daredevil finds the brakes have been cut and the gas pedal has been nailed to the floor, which doesn't really explain how the car stayed on the road without a driver. Worse yet, the man without fear hears a bomb inside the speeding car. With moments to spare, Hornhead drives away from the busy city streets and aims the exploding auto for the river. The weaponized car was an elaborate diversion to allow the Stilt Man to commit a robbery on the other side of town. Boasting body armor, metal stilts, and a grenade, Stilt Man robs payroll funds from a helicopter, which we have to assume was just hovering in place. Matt quickly zeroes in on the location of Stilt Man's rather conspicuous high-rise robbery through the use of a microphone gadget and booster antennas hidden in his devil horns, but the villain quickly disappears from the skyline. Later, at the law office of Nelson and Murdoch, inventor Wilbur Day wants to sue his employer, Carl Caxton. Day claims the hydraulic lift he personally invented has been stolen by Caxton Laboratories. Obviously, in an impossible coincidence, this is the same technology used by Stilt Man. This time, Stan Lee gives no explanation as to why the Stilt Man case has come to the office of Nelson and Murdoch. This would seem to be the same outdated writing style you would see in a 400-year-old Shakespeare play, as the characters here exist to serve the plot, as opposed to the plot developing naturally from the actions of grounded characters. When Matt Murdock ultimately ends up with his client Wilbur Day and Carl Caxton in his office, the men argue over ownership of the hydraulic invention. Tempers rise and Matt hears a guilty heartbeat, but the men are too close together, and he is unable to determine which man is lying. During the next robbery, Daredevil catches up to Stilt Man, but is nearly crushed between a building and a swift kick from the hydraulic stilts, allowing the skyscraping criminal to escape again. Soon Matt and the Stilt Man meet for the first real fight between Daredevil and this unique member of his classic rogues gallery. Despite DD's fearless efforts to tackle Stilt Man out of the air, he is unable to grip the greased-up extension legs of the armored suit, and again fails to capture the lofty thief. Finally, Wilbur Day leads the young attorney to the home laboratory of Carl Caxton. The hydraulic stilts are on the premises, and Caxton surprises the intruders with a gun. Though Caxton would seem to be guilty, Wilbur Day attacks Matt, revealing this is all a further attempt by the Stilt Man to steal more of Caxton's technology. Day equips his stilts to make a fast escape. With Daredevil in pursuit, the two have a brief struggle, and Day is accidentally exposed to a Caxton shrinking ray, which appears to dissolve Wilbur Day, the Stilt Man, into nothingness. Today, most readers look back at Stilt Man and laugh. But your takeaway here is that the stilts were never intended to be a combat threat. You can actually draw a lot of parallels to the way this villain is presented and the numerous gangsters with unusual weapons who came out of the extremely popular Batman books from this same era. Wilbur Day was an inventor who stole technology to commit crimes for personal profit. And the stilt gimmick is actually secondary to the story's conflict. When we look at it honestly, this fantasy crime story is one of the earliest milestones in establishing the detective career of the man without fear. While a futuristic stilt costume does sound ridiculous, the character of Wilbur Stiltman Day endured for 5 decades because of the success of exciting stories just like this one.
That was another iconic Daredevil villain. But next time we meet, we're going to look at a classic superhero team-up for Daredevil. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything. Until next time, always live without fear.